Hi there. We're back. And this is something completely different. No cast iron, no big tent for the truck, no food recipes. This is just something I wanted to do. If you'll notice, the back of my truck here, there is not much here. The only thing that's here is my kitchen box, some water, and some firewood. Everything else is inside the truck. What I'm doing is, this is a minimalist camp. I got this idea a little while back from Softroadingthewest, where he took his mother's Toyota Camry out and to go camping to prove a point that you don't need a $50,000 truck and $25,000 worth of mods and a $5,000 tent in order to go out and go overlanding or camping, for that matter. You can use what you got. I've seen many comments on videos, both mine and other people's, where people are saying, oh, I would love to go out camping, but I don't have this, I don't have that, I need this, I haven't got the truck that I want and I can't afford to buy this and all that. Well, what people are doing by doing that is they're providing themselves an excuse to not go out there, because the beginners are usually, I hate to say this, but they're scared. There's nothing to be scared of. You can go out in any vehicle that you've got, a Toyota Camry, Honda Civic, Cadillac Eldorado, whatever it may be, whatever vehicle you've got, throw the gear that you've got in it and go camping. Why not? Just to show you we can do it, take that first step to go out and become one of the people out here doing overlanding. I brought minimal gear, stuff that I've had on my shelf in my garage since my motorcycle camping days. You know, it's basic stuff: a tent, a sleeping bag, a little stove, and a few odds and ends, and that's it. And it's more than enough to keep you happy and healthy and ready to go again the next time this opportunity comes around. So let me get this stuff out and I'll set it on the table and we'll talk about it next. Okay, here we go. Not much. All I have here is basic stuff to keep me comfortable. On the left, well, you're right, my left, I have a Coleman 30-degree sleeping bag, cost $45. I have a Mountain Hardware Light Wedge 3 tent, a 3-person semi-backpacking tent, because it's way too big than any backpacker would normally carry. Perfect for motorcycle camping though, or car camping. Cost $200. But then that was 10 years ago when I bought it. It's probably not even available anymore. But anyway, that's the way it is. Along with that, I have a ground sheet, 2 pads to go inside the tent on the floor, along with a wool blanket. The one thing that will make you cold and miserable on a camping trip, even if everything else is good, is the ground. Even in summertime at night, you know, in the wee hours of the morning, that ground's going to cool off and it absorbs heat like a magnet. So it can just suck all the heat out of your tent right through the bottom. It's always nice to put a pad or something down underneath there so that you have a layer between you and the ground to keep your body heat inside the tent. So that's what these pads and the blanket are for. This blanket is a wool military issue GI blanket. It cost a whopping $25 and I've had it for 20 years and it works fine. These are the pads. These Believe it or not, these are furniture moving pads from Harbor Freight. 2 of them. Whopping cost $10 for both. A foam pad. If you are 18 years old or 20, somewhere in there, you probably don't need a pad. But trust me, as you get older, and as I've found out, when you get older, the pad becomes much, much thicker. As over here on the other side, to do supper tonight, we have a cheap little single burner Coleman stove. Cost $30. And of course a can of propane. And this whopping big monstrosity box here, this is my cooler. It cost me $5 at a yard sale. And down in the front, in my kitchen box that I normally carry around with all my utensils and paper towels and plates and pots and pans and all that. The box itself costs $20. What you put in it is up to you, but everybody should have a separate kitchen box to put all your stuff in so you don't lose it. And of course a chair. Does it really take that much to go camping? To go overlanding? Yeah, I know you're going to say, oh, well look at him, he's got that big fancy Toyota truck. Not so fast. This is a 7-year-old Gen 2 Tacoma SR5, bare bones 4-wheel drive Toyota truck. No lockers, no fancy wiring, no extra batteries, nothing. It's bone stock with the exception of the tires. The tires are 10-ply heavy-duty truck tires because I live in the desert and the rocks out here are really, really sharp. If you have cheap tires, they'll last you about a month and then fall apart. We don't want to do that. So this is all you really need. There is one more item. I'll talk to you about that in a little while. Right now, I'm going to go set up my tent, and I'll give you a few pointers on tents along the way once I get the thing set up. Things to look for. Okay, let me look up a bit. Okay, a couple of things to look for when you buy a tent. No matter what you buy anymore, especially if it's a small tent, all the builders want it to be as light as they possibly can. It's all about weight because that's all backpackers care about. Let me pick up a stake here. When you buy a tent, normally this is what you get in the way of stakes. Cheap pieces of wire, bent. They're made out of aluminum usually, and they're lightweight, so that's what gets packed in your tent. These things are worthless. If anytime you buy a tent, you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to have to buy stakes to go with it. For a smaller tent, I prefer these. These little purple things are bent aluminum, but they're bent in a 90-degree V shape, and this is aircraft aluminum, billet aluminum. And you buy these from MSR or just about any place that sells good quality tents will have these. They're about $1 a piece, and they're worth every penny. I've used this one for 10 years with this tent and the others that are staked in here, and they've never bent, never pulled loose in any kind of a storm. You know, rocks, dirt, roots, whatever, they'll just drive right into a tree root. They don't care. Excellent stuff. Another thing to look for when you buy a tent is what kind of tent poles does it have? See if I can get this up close to here where you can see. These are aluminum poles that are deliberately built like this so that they nest together, and they have good quality steel ends on them. So these kind of tent poles will last forever. If you buy a tent that's got fiber, or look at a tent and it's got those cheap black or yellow or brown fiberglass poles, don't buy it, because those things will break. They'll get bent and form a permanent curve. You won't be able to straighten them out. And if you go camping when it's really cold, they'll snap on you. Look for a tent with good quality, heavy-duty aluminum poles. You'll be much happier. Okay, here's some other things to look for on a tent when you want to buy one. I mentioned the poles. Okay, these are good heavy-duty 5/16 inch spun aluminum, aircraft aluminum. And you'll notice that how these work, they're clipped. A lot of the cheaper tents will have a sleeve running up here that you run the pole through and then just set it into the ends into the corners of the tent. But that's the cheap way to do it. A good quality tent should have clips like this. They make it a whole lot easier to put up. The good quality four-season tents, a lot of them have sleeves, but they're like triple sewn with heavy material because they're designed to carry a lot of weight of snow and ice. Most tents, three-season tents like this one, don't have that. Good quality clips, heavy-duty material. If you look at the material, everything on this tent is double sewn. Every seam has got two different sets of stitches through it. And it's all heavy-duty ripstop material. So those are good things to look for. Another thing to look for is breathability. If you look at this tent, you see this is all mesh. From here on up, it's all mesh. Lots of breathability, good air circulation. That's a must. If you buy a tent that's a single wall tent with no ventilation like this, in any kind of cold or damp weather, moisture is going to condense on the inside of the tent on that single layer of fabric, and you're going to end up with water dripping down on you, just like you were in a jungle. The way to avoid condensation is lots of breathability. So look for a tent with a lot of mesh. You know, not necessarily the whole top made out of mesh, but good big mesh panels for breathability. The good side effect to that is that if the weather's good, you don't have to put the rain fly over it. You can just stargaze at night. That's always fun to do. Okay, other thing I want to talk about is rain flies. That's the rain fly for this tent laying there on the ground. I'll put it on in a minute. But you want to look for a rain fly that's going to cover the whole tent. If you buy a cheapy tent where the rain fly is a dome and the rain fly comes down about this far and the rest is plain old one wall tent, you're going to have condensation issues. Not to mention, if you get a really good rain, it's just going to come up underneath here and drip into the tent. So look for a good quality tent, double stitch seams, aluminum poles that has a rain fly that will go all the way down to the bottom of the tent and cover the whole thing. And what you'll end up with is two layers. You get an inner layer of this, and this air gap between here and the aluminum poles all the way around, and the rain fly sits on top of that. So that air gap allows air to circulate around in here and avoid having that condensation drip on you. Give me a minute, I'll put the rain fly on here and give you another tip to look for once it's in place. Okay, here's a couple other things to look for in a quality tent. We already covered the mesh screening and things like that. Nice things that you don't see in cheapy tents is things like this, where we have tie-down loops. You know, you can hang stuff. This in here is for a net that hangs between here and another spot over here on the back a four-cornered net where you can hang stuff here and put wet clothes and stuff in it so they'll dry. Mesh pockets to hang clothes and phones and tablets and whatever else you need. Here's another one, here's another one. And probably the best thing of all for a good quality tent, you see here, this is called a vestibule. It's where the fabric of the rain fly extends out past the front of the tent so that it gives you an empty dry spot in the front here where you can put wet clothes, boots, packs. And if it's pouring down rain and it's 38 degrees out there and you really don't want to go out there to make breakfast, you can use a little propane stove or an alcohol stove here in the vestibule to make breakfast if it stays out there. You don't even want to bring it inside the tent. That's a no-no. Never use a gasoline fed stove inside the tent or in the vestibule. They give off way too much carbon monoxide. But a propane or alcohol stove, a small backpacker stove, they work fine in the vestibule. If you see, the vestibule doesn't go all the way to the ground. It's about 3 inches off. And you can see it moving around in the breeze, so that tells you you've got a lot of air circulation here. So carbon monoxide won't be an issue with a small stove. So again, the vestibule gives you extra space to do things that you don't normally do inside the tent, like dry your clothes, make breakfast, make coffee, whatever. And it's a really nice thing to have. So if you buy a tent, put that on your list to check off. Does it have a vestibule or not? If it does have a vestibule, how big is it? If it's only a foot out there from the front of the tent, it's not going to do you much good. Okay, let's talk sleeping bags. It's one of the 3 vital parts of your gear. Stay warm, stay dry, stay fed. The tent's going to help keep you dry and warm. Stay warm. Other than that, that's where your sleeping bag comes in. Another one of those things you don't want to cheap out on. You can, but again, you get what you pay for. And I'm going to keep harping on that. As you're buying equipment, don't buy the cheap stuff just based on price. Buy quality, the best quality you can afford, plus just a little bit more. You'll be glad you did in the end. So, sleeping bags are your personal preference. Do you want a rectangular bag? Do you want a mummy bag? Do you want a semi-mummy bag? Is there 2 of you and you want sleeping bags that zip together? Whatever combination you want. That's your first choice, decision. You got to make a decision what kind to get. And then you have to make a decision on what type do I get. You can have a rectangular bag like this that's nylon. You can have one that's got a flannel lining, it's got a silk lining, it's got ripstop on the outside, lots of choices. So what kind of material do you want? Personally, I'm old. When I started with sleeping bags, they were heavy canvas on the outside and flannel lined. And I still prefer that. This Coleman is canvas on the outside and flannel lined. I'm always more comfortable that way. I do have a really nice North Face mummy bag that I use for motorcycle camping, and I still use it occasionally, but it's an extra large size. And I use that only if I have to pack something up really small and make a trip somewhere. That doesn't happen very often anymore. So pick your choice of materials, the type and style, and then go shopping. And just like with tents, look for the name brands. Also, a word about that temperature setting of sleeping bags that they put on the label. Oh, look, this is a minus 10 degree sleeping bag. Or this is a 20-degree bag. If you think you're going to get a 20-degree bag and it'll be comfortable at 20 degrees, you're kidding yourself. That's manufacturer's hype. What they're telling you is that 20-degree bag will keep you alive if it's 20 degrees. Not about keeping you comfortable. So if you expect to be camping in the cold, buy a bag that's rated 15, maybe 20 degrees lower than the coldest temperature you expect to be in. And if you're living like me in the high desert, where in the wintertime it might be minus 15 out here, in the summertime it's 115, you might want 2 sleeping bags. One for winter, one for summer. So start off with whichever one you're going to think you're going to use the most. For most of it, it's a summer weight bag. A 30 degree or a 20 degree bag is fine, because during the summer your chances of having a night colder than 30 degrees are kind of minimal. So there you go. That's the advice on bags. Buy the temperature rating lower than the lowest temperature you expect to be in, and get material that you like. Again, buy quality name brand gear from people that are, known to be making this stuff. And another thing to do for a sleeping bag is go to a reputable camping goods store. Ask to test ride a sleeping bag. Yeah, that's right. They'll do that for you if they're a good quality store. Any major brand name place like REI, heck, Sportsman's Warehouse, a couple of these others, Cabela's, they should allow you to take a sleeping bag. They should have basically a demo bag hanging there that you can take down, lay out on the floor, on carpet, or on a cot or something, and try it out. Does it fit? Is it comfortable? Which side do you want the zipper on, left or right? Well, which one feels best? They come either way. So test run the sleeping bag if they'll let you. If they won't let you, you might want to go somewhere else to buy, because the people that are selling it to you aren't that big into the outdoors. They just want to make a sale. Anybody that's a real outdoorsman that's in a store and is selling stuff, they're going to understand when you want to test out the sleeping bag. Heck, a lot of those stores even have tents. They set the tents up in a special corner of the store where you can crawl inside the tent and look out, see how big it is, how it fits, check it all out, and decide if you like it or not. It all depends on where you go. So again, buy quality, take your time, and get something that is good, that you're going to keep for a while, and it'll serve you well. There is one more thing, kind of like Steve Jobs, every time he'd come up with an Apple annual report. Oh, and there's one more thing. Okay, we'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, here it is, one last thing. Probably the most important piece of gear you will ever buy to take camping or overlanding. It's more important than all that other stuff. And you might not think so, but it is. You need one of these. Always, always, always take a notepad and a pen every single time you go camping. Use it to take notes. What worked right? What didn't work? What did you forget? What did you bring that you never used? Gee, how about those tent pegs that we mentioned? Did they work? Write it down. If they didn't, write that down. Always write it down at the time, because if you wait till you get home, you'll forget. Especially if you're like me and you get older. But this will save you a whole ton of money. You know, if you decide that you are out here and you had a 10-inch Dutch oven with you 5 times in a row and you've never used it, write it down and remember to not bring it. Same thing, vice versa. If you forgot to bring a cast iron skillet and you don't have one, or it's not big enough, write it down so you fix that when you get home. Whatever the gear is, nothing's perfect. And sooner or later, things break, you'll forget things, You bring too much of something, too little of something else. Make a note that, oh gee, I don't really care for this camp chair. Yeah, I want to go try one of those other ones that I saw yesterday. Write it down. Again, best yet, get that notepad and pen, put it in your vehicle and leave it there. That way it'll always be there when you need it. So we've been everywhere now. We've been through the tent and the sleeping bag, so you know how to stay warm, stay dry. And heck, you know me and my channel, you already know how to get fed. We do that a lot around here. And just because I didn't bring all the cast iron and I'm all alone and got nothing really else to do, I might do a little supper video for you. It's going to be really complicated. It's going to be chili dogs. That's right. I'm the guy that makes all his wonderful camp recipes and I'm out here by myself. I don't bring most of that stuff. I'll bring the skillet and what I need to make stuff for me, and that's about it. But if I'm cooking for the group, then all that stuff comes out. So you guys are special. You get to see me when I do all that stuff. Okay, come back to you in a bit. Okay, we've shown that it doesn't take much. Basic gear, any vehicle, doesn't matter. You can come out here and get started playing overlanding. Not difficult at all. An ancient Chinese philosopher named Lao Tzu coined the phrase, "Journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step." He was right. The corollary to that someone else came up with is that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, and it is the hardest step. You know, it's getting yourself to make that commitment, to make the first step, to get you on the path, to do what you want to succeed in doing. You got to start somewhere. So start with the vehicle you've got, basic camping gear, and just go. There's tens of thousands of places you can go in the National Forest and Bureau of Land Management cared for lands. They're everywhere. This place is 35 miles from town, and it's 16 miles from the nearest pavement. But you can get here with any sort of car. Four-wheel drive not required, high clearance not required. It's a decent gravel road. Your car's going to get a little dusty, but who cares? It's all part of the adventure. So don't be afraid of it. Make a little commitment. You know, take the first step. Now, I'll give you a little clue. Before you go anywhere, if you've never done anything but take a picnic in the park once in a while, I highly suggest you go down to your local BLM field office or the nearest ranger station for the Forest Service and talk to them there. They have maps that they'll either give you or you can buy at a pretty cheap price. They have maps of the National Forest and the BLM district that you're in. And it shows all the roads. Talk to the rangers. They will be more than glad to show you things that are accessible to a regular vehicle without needing four-wheel drive. And no matter where you go, any ranger district, any BLM district, they are going to have places you can go in a regular vehicle. If you happen to have four-wheel drive or a good all-wheel drive, well, so much the better. You can go more places. But don't let the idea that you need a big four-wheel drive and a big rooftop tent and a bunch of high-dollar equipment stop you. That's not true. I camped with this for a lot of years. Now I'm old and decrepit. This is a little uncomfortable sometimes. As long as it's summertime like this, it's fine for me, but I don't like camping in that little tent and the sleeping bag in cold weather. My old body just doesn't want to do that. It's one of those things I have to take into account. But hey, I can still do it. Did it last night, and I slept well. Of course, it was 95 degrees yesterday, and you could probably tell by the way I was sweating to death in front of the camera. But when I'm out here, you can be too. So take the first step. We look forward to seeing you out here, and I hope I see you out there. And if I do see you, I'm making supper. Bye. I just noticed something back here behind me. So I'm going to give you a little bonus footage here. This is how we track wildlife out here in the wilderness. I can't cover it all with a little narrow camera, so I'm just going to leave a wide angle here and I'll talk to you as I go, tell you what I see, and then I'll tell you my conclusions on what went on here. Here we go. Okay, right in here I see tracks. They're not very wide, they're not very heavy, and there's two sets. They're about this far apart, and they're paralleling each other, going in a straight line. Now, because of my extreme wilderness experience, I've seen tracks like this before, so I recognize them. So I'm going to follow them along here and see where they go. And these tracks stop right about here. There's one right here and one set right here. Another thing I see that's pretty obvious is right here next to me. You can probably see it on the camera. Wet spot. There was a lot of water here at one time. So I have two tracks, and I'll just go right and tell you my guess, based on experience, is these two tracks are a set of B.F. Goodrich KO2s. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, really common, so everybody's got them. That's probably what it is. Well, these are unique. This set is very light, so whatever it was isn't very heavy, and they're not very wide apart, so whatever it was wasn't too big. So this is a small, lightweight vehicle and a puddle of water. What else can we find? Looks like somebody had a tent right here a while back. And what do you know? Stag chili can. That gives me all the clues I need. narrow, lightweight KO2s. I'm just going to go ahead and call it. That was a foreign, lightweight off-road vehicle. I'm going to say it was a Subaru Forester. That between this Stag chili can, that wet spot, and the narrow tracks, I've come to the conclusion that what we have here, Softroadingthewest has been here and left his mark. Yep, I'm sure of it. Oh, one more thing. Donald, if you're watching this, this stuff is really good. You should get them to sponsor you. Later. Okay, for those of you that have no clue what that last 2 minutes was about, I have a little story to tell. This place you probably recognize from other videos. I come down here a lot because it's a nice place, good place to camp overnight, and during the middle of the week there's hardly ever anybody here. Now, I was over on the other side of the table just now, and I opened up this can of chili to make chili dogs for supper. Like, you know, I told you I was going to do that in the other video, the other part of the video. And this little light came on, and it dawned on me where I was. I am parked 2 spaces over from where Dawn, Softroadingthewest. I keep calling it Southwest. So anyway, Softroadingthewest, Donald, his channel is phenomenal. If you haven't got his channel on your subscribe list, you should do it. I'll put the description, you know, how to get to it down there, and the video series I'm talking about right now will be down there with it. Anyway, a few months back, Donald took his Subaru on a quest across southeast Oregon, coming from Eugene, and he came through southeast Oregon on dirt roads, and on day 5 of his 7-day trip, he stopped here to camp, right in that spot I was just looking at. And that was pretty much where his trip ended. He had what I call the Forester flood. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but water was involved, quite a bit of it. And he decided to end his trip and go home. Well, you know, all the drama aside, this is like day 5, and the video series is 5 parts long, 1 for each day. At the end of day 5, this is where he was. And his trip was over. So he packed all his stuff up, was all grumpy, and he went home. But that's not the end of the story. On his way home, you know, just sure that he'd ruined his trip, on his way home he encountered basically a guy that is pretty much a Pacific Northwest YouTube superstar, master overlander. Just happened to, he encountered the guy on his way home, and that changed his whole trip. He decided that he was going to stick around for an extra day, so the 2 of them went camping, and the trip turned out, in spite of the tragic accident here, trip turned out really well. So I'm going to put that 5-part trip down here where you can begin watching that, and then after you watch that, you'll understand what I just did for 2 minutes there. And I'm sorry, Donald, I couldn't resist. Once I realized where I was and what I was having for supper, and the fact that I was out here because I watched your video where you went camping with your mom's Toyota Camry. I mean, it's full circle. It couldn't have happened in a more predictable way. So please don't hate me. And if I ever get to meet you in person, I'll buy the whiskey, I promise. Good night, everybody. See you later.